Hey, it's Larry Sharpe here at FreedomFest, having amazing conversations with people here about human respect and how people feel about their values and about their ethics. And I'm here, very lucky to be here with Lawson Bader. Please, tell us about yourself.
Sure, Lawson Bader. I'm the President and CEO of DonorsTrust and Donors Capital Fund, which are financial organizations helping a lot of conservative and libertarians with their giving. So,
excellent, that's great. I like people giving, that's amazing.
Giving's good.
I want to talk about that. Most people, when they decide to give, they're trying to kind of deal with the value they have, a feeling they have about something, right? I like this, or I support that, and they want to give to support that thing. I'm sure you spend a lot of time talking to people about this, right? Probably every day.
Yep.
What I want to discuss is the difference between values and ethics. And what that means is someone's values may be more conservative or more liberal, but the question is, do they want to use force, whether that coercion or government coercion, to move that agenda, right? Is that their goal? And more importantly, at what point is it okay, right? If you're very liberal and you want the world to be more liberal, when is it okay to say, we need to use some coercion here?
Sure.
If you're more conservative, when is it okay to say, when are we going to use some coercion here? And we have a chart here. We talk about this idea, right?
Yep.
The idea of if you're more conservative, but you want to use more coercion versus more persuasion, you're moving more towards a political party, Republicans, versus just worrying about human respect.
Yeah.
Right? And the same if you're more progressive, same idea, right? So I got to ask you, where do you think you fall in this?
Yeah, I think, to your observation about the values and ethics, I think it's a good one because I think values are inherent.
Right.
They may grow, they may evolve based on experiences and deeply held beliefs.
Right.
And ideally the value is the North Star that you have. The ethics come with sort of the collective beliefs we have and how people behave and what they should and shouldn't do. And I wouldn't say it's tied to laws so much, although that's sort of a motivation for that. So I think the values part of giving should be the most important aspect because it's yours.
Right.
It's your resource. It's your time. It's your treasure. It's your talents.
Right.
And it should align with your values.
Oh, it's a valid point because we're not just giving money, we're also giving time.
Volunteering is giving.
Sure.
Matters for a 22-year-old doesn't have $10,000, but is happy to be at the cat shelter.
Right.
Or dealing with the cause. And then maybe they have the $10,000 at some point, but they hopefully don't also give up the idea of their time as being a sacrifice. So I think that's the important part of giving is tying those together.
I would say even someone's, maybe tell me if I'm wrong here, even someone's kind of personal brand, right? Being tied to something makes, she's on board. Maybe I should be on board. He's on board. Maybe I should be on board.
I think the peer-to-peer matters, I think, the most in giving. In fact, we make a lot of recommendations to our clients and to other donors, like, look, don't rely just on us. You should be talking to other people.
Right.
Hey, Larry, what are the groups that you care about right now? Why are you interested in blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It could be, you're doing a lot of things on anti-cancer research because you just learned your neighbor, your wife, your whomever.
Right.
So that's not an ethical change, that's a value change. It's the value of human dignity, human respect. It just now is manifested through something differently, but the value hasn't changed. But you're going to want that recommendation. That peer-to-peer when it comes to the giving aspect.
That's the ultimate persuasion.
It's someone's behavior because they have given sacrificially, which means they value that, which means you can too. So
let me make what I think is a common thought process, that everyone around us wants to be happy in some way. They want to have more harmony, more happiness, more prosperity. I think everybody does want that.
Sure.
Generally speaking, I think, if you would agree with me, when someone uses coercion, when someone, say, physically harms someone or steals their stuff, either through direct theft or fraud, there's going to be less happiness and less prosperity and less freedom. Am I right?
Correct.
Do you think that is always? And every time I use coercion, someone is going to be unhappy in some way, shape, or form. Someone is going to have less prosperity because I'm using coercion. Right? I'm forcing you to do something.
Yes.
I'm going to make things worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly true. And I think in sort of looking at this, the motivation, I think, for sometimes it winds up being the coercion.
Yep.
Whether it's philanthropic or anything, is envy.
Ooh,
I think envy is arguably one of the most dangerous sins, for lack of a better word. Because envy is, you have what I want, what I don't have, which also shows I have a lack of understanding of who I am and what makes me happy.
Wow.
And an assumption that if I had that, I would be happy. And we all fall into that camp.
100%.
But as we move into the political realm, the envy becomes worse. It becomes,
Yes.
Bill Gates is rich. Elon Musk is rich and he has what I want, or he got it because he used coercion to take from somebody else. And I oftentimes say, the mistake we get in the envy world when it comes to, say, giving is, Elon Musk drives a car.
Right.
I drive a car. His might be kind of cooler,
Right.
but it's a car.
Right.
Bill Gates flies a private airplane. Well, so do I. So do you. It just so happens to be shared with 200 other people.
Right.
So the gap may not actually be what
Right.
you think it is. It's
Right.
the degree, but it's the envy that drives
So
that.
you're saying that
then
if-
politicians take that and move it into a coercion.
So if I believe that you got your property through coercion, then I am more likely to say, well, I can use coercion to get it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Got it.
And I
Okay.
think that's a particular danger, but it comes from us recognizing when we are being envious.
Got it.
And the same thing, we saw this obviously the last couple of years. People also categorize in the risk, non-risk category.
Right.
That is not a political. If you were to redo this with sort of risk, you would see risk-averse Republicans and risk-averse Democrats. Think of all my neighbors that were the conservative ones who were like, I'm not leaving my house during COVID.
Right.
The lockdowns I think are good, not criticizing, and my progressive neighbors saying, this is insane.
Right, what am I doing?
That is more of a personality reflection than necessarily an ideological political one.
So
and that's been an interesting
Let's
mix
talk about
too.
policy then, if I could. Let me chat about policy real fast. In your view, is it okay for the government to punish people for using or selling drugs?
No.
No. But isn't the person who wants to impose that law, isn't their intent good? Don't you think the average voter who says we need to have drug laws, isn't that person saying, I'm trying to help you, right?
Sure.
I care about you.
Right.
I don't want you to get hooked on drugs. Maybe my friend died of drugs or something like that, right? Maybe
Understandable.
that's happened. And I go,
Right.
come on.
Right.
Doesn't that make it okay?
Well, I would argue, so why aren't you just picking up the phone and helping that person with whatever? Why are you relying on somebody else to do it for you?
So you're saying persuasion is better
I
in
think
this case.
persuasion
Example
is better in
in
that
this
case.
place.
Living it out, whether
Okay.
where your motivations come from, not going to judge that. But
Okay.
it's, if you think about it, we are all prone to sin in
Sure.
some capacity.
100%.
And a way we overcome that, whether one is looking at it through a religious lens or a classical liberal lens, is it comes from mutual conversations,
Yes.
the persuasion, the ability to trade. And so at the end of the day, it's the high altar of trust
Got
that we
it.
want to come before.
Okay.
We trust the people, we like the people we trust. We maybe dislike the people we don't trust, wherever that happens to be.
Okay.
And I think when we
So
pick
hold
up
on,
the mantle,
in both cases you've told me, and I love this, you told me in both cases, I don't want to use coercion, that I want to use persuasion to give. I want to use persuasion to get someone to not do drugs.
Right.
Okay.
I want to use action.
Okay.
I will let my action speak to my
Example.
values, et cetera. Example.
Got it.
And I will try to persuade others to join forces to do the same thing. And I
Got
think
it.
that's part of the sort of the little civil society army of groups that
Okay.
we have out there of acting collectively, even though we're not acting under a collectivist
So of course,
mentality.
it's voluntary.
It's voluntary.
Yes.
And keeping that voluntary, but we also make those decisions on trust and value. And that's how we overcome the, I can't believe you voted for
Right.
fill in the blank.
Right.
You
The
know?
guy I didn't vote for.
Yeah.
How
But
could
if
you
I'm
do that?
sitting
Yes.
next to you watching a mutual, our kids play basketball together, but I know you voted for X and I voted for Y, or whatever, it's a little harder for me to
Right.
hate you because
We're in the same team now.
we're encouraging the kids.
Right, right, right.
And having that social interaction is very important, I think does break down some of this.
So let me make another step if I could. What about something like, and it's very controversial now, what about something like immigration,
Sure.
right? The idea of punishing business owners for hiring undocumented workers or illegal migrants, right? What about that?
I think the immigration issue is just fraught with so many
Yes.
various levels. You
I
have folks saying there is a vested state interest in the protection of a legal boundary. You can argue as to what extent, but that concept is a legitimate concept.
Got it.
So
Okay.
fair enough. You have the questions of citizens voting versus non-citizens,
Sure.
contributing in ways that we may not think we'd like to do as much, but that's part of it,
I get
and the benefits
But
back.
in this case, I'm speaking specifically
But now you
about
have businesses
the business.
saying,
Yes, in this case.
but we need to we
need workers.
we need workers, and
Yeah.
we're not getting it over here, so we're going to have to get it over there. And oh, by the way, corporations are not people. I mean, they are people,
Well,
but
sadly,
they're not,
the Supreme Court would disagree with you, but
unfortunately,
yes.
I know, but that's
Yes.
that's the challenge.
Yep.
And we also fail to realize it's businesses are actually providing the social change that's necessary. So again, back to the Bill Gates thing.
Right.
He gets credit for a private foundation and giving anti-malaria nets everywhere. That's great. He should get more credit for changing the lives of millions of people around the planet to make wealth more opportunistic.
But let's go back to the idea
and
that
we
there are a
shouldn't
lot
punish
of people.
the businesses for doing
So you're saying
that.
we shouldn't punish
I mean,
them?
I'm saying, well, I don't think we should punish the businesses now.
But aren't these migrants, whether you call them undocumented, illegal, whatever
Yeah.
title you want to use,
Yeah.
aren't they taking the job of a good American? Aren't they doing that?
Well, the good Americans aren't applying for them, so there's
Okay.
nothing to take if that's
Okay.
necessarily the case. So
Okay.
I think there's also, no, I give businesses need creativity, they need entrepreneurship. They have to act within the law. And
So,
laws
but they're
can
not.
change, but they're not.
Hold on, but
and
to your point, they're not acting in the law. If they are hiring an undocumented worker, they are not within the law. Does that make it okay? I mean, you talked earlier about legal isn't always the same as ethical, isn't always the same as moral.
I think now we have the ethical dilemma because
Yeah.
to a certain extent they are not complying with what the rule of law is.
Correct.
We all believe in rule of law, even though law can change.
Yep.
So on one hand, you are now punishing something that I think the public policy question then becomes what happens.
So hold on. So in this specific case, and I'm only asking your opinion.
Yeah, okay.
Your personal opinion.
Yeah.
So you're not speaking for anybody else
Yep.
but yourself in this
Yep.
case. In your personal view, not legally, your personal view, do you believe that the business should not be punished?
I believe the business should not be punished.
Not be punished. Okay,
Correct.
good. So you're on
Yep.
persuasion no matter what. So I feel like you're saying, if I got you right, that
I'm sympathetic to the coercion argument because of
course.
the vested interest. So I don't dismiss it.
so you're basically giving respect to the people who disagree.
Correct.
You
That's
are
right.
you are literally living a human respect value
Yeah.
here when you're saying this, right? Because you're saying, look, I may not be happy or I can understand you, but I've got to give you respect. So if I get you right, you're saying that the value of human respect is like a natural law almost. It's a principle that is 100% always true. We always want to show human respect, and if we don't act in that way, we are going to create some kind of loss of harmony, some loss of happiness or prosperity.
Yeah, I would only sort of codify that with intellectual humility is a big piece of it.
Got it.
And empathy.
Okay.
If we don't have intellectual humility and the understanding of empathy, we're going to have a hard time on that interaction persuasion part because I think we're going to be incalcitrant in our behavior. And that's the other part that needs to be a piece of that.
Got it. Okay.
Not empathetic, that's
Okay.
not a world that I want to live in either.
But there's a difference between empathy and sympathy.
Without question.
Right? I mean, I
Without
can.
question.
So to be forward, going to what I think is legal, but also I think natural right, which is freedom of speech. So if I don't like what you're doing, I can tell you, I think you're wrong.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't do the thing.
Absolutely.
But what I want to do, though, is not force you to not do it. I want to encourage you to not do it.
I think that's the challenge I think a lot of people have is we need to do something, right?
Right.
That motivation that people have of that's wrong.
Right.
Therefore, well, that's not a bad response. In fact, I would like to say, the house is on fire. I need to try to go do something.
Right.
That would be a useful, especially if my house is on fire.
Right.
So you want to
Yes.
encourage that, and that's maybe not the best example.
No, but I get it completely. Yep.
You want to be reactive, but then you have to pause and say, but what's the right way of reacting?
Understood.
And how do I maybe get more voluntary work to address that issue, whatever it is?
So let me ask you on a personal level. If I understand what we talked about here, you already know, you came in here understanding that the idea of human respect, the idea that using coercion, using force or theft is going to make things worse. And that's every single time. It's a natural law. So every single time we're going to try to do that. Is there a way that you think now you could either communicate differently, do something differently that would speak not to empathy, as you said, but actually the idea of getting someone to understand it's really about respect. Because when you say empathy, people often confuse it with sympathy.
Correct.
Right? They often
That's
do.
Very different.
But human respect is not that way. Human respect is I respect you even if I disagree with you.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a way that we could communicate differently or do something differently with that?
Should we all be average New Yorkers that are just happy to tell you you're stupid, but to buy you a pastrami sandwich afterwards?
I mean, like that.
To a certain extent, that's
I love
a bit
it.
of it.
So we can tell someone our opinion,
Right.
but still reward them in some way with human
That's right.
contact.
Well, I think that's the empathy sympathy bit that goes into that. So, yeah, I think yes, I would like to think that I am sympathetic I am not going to go to the extra step of forcing you to. But the only aspect I think that, to your question about how do you persuade differently, is it still needs to be tied in with the concept people have of justice. Because I think, and that's what do we mean by that? And that's an open question.
Of course.
Of people do feel there is injustice, and there is injustice. So that's the only, I think, how we address what is perceived as an injustice, which could be a coerced activity that created that injustice.
Right.
So do you now create a coerced activity back? Well,
but from what you're telling me,
plowshare and the sword.
Yes.
So how do we bring that in when it comes to the questions of injustice? And that's a whole different conversation.
But that's an MLK Gandhi idea where you still use persuasion. Even against coercion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you would even say, even in that case, it is that much of a principle. Even in that case, we should.
If I see someone beating up some kid, I'm not going to necessarily go up and say, I don't think you should be doing this.
Right.
I might have to act forcefully.
Sure.
That's coercion.
Sure.
I think that's probably a value versus an ethic kind of a situation.
But wouldn't you still, even in that case, wouldn't you show kind of the primacy of human respect and first say, hey, stop.
Exactly.
Because you don't know why they're fighting.
I don't know what's going on. I'm judging something here with what I am seeing.
Right.
So yes, your first reaction is to try to separate, break.
Right.
This person may actually have caused an injustice.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know that.
Right. We don't know.
So separate, pause, take a breath. Let's not fall back on the coercion immediately.
Got it.
Then we'll have to decide.
So there would even still be a primacy of persuasion, of human respect, even in the case of coercion and violence. You still start with that and then only go to coercion if there's no other option.
Otherwise, you're the bull in the china shop.
There we go.
And you destroy a lot of Ming Dynasty stuff.
Wow. Lawson Bader, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time. That was an amazing conversation.
Larry, it was fun.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.